I wanted to, first off, just by way of introduction, my name is Doug O'Malley. I'm the Director of Environment New Jersey. We represent more than 20,000 citizen members across this great state. I'm also so excited to be joined here this evening for this forum with the League of Women Voters and the Citizens Campaign, because here, even though we're based in Trenton, we have not necessarily done a ton of community outreach in Trenton. And so I'm really excited to get a chance to not only be doing this event here at the Cathedral, and I want to thank again Dean John for his willingness and for all members of this congregation for opening up their house to us this evening, but for the I guess the willingness to kind of learn about these issues. And I want to kind of do what might be an impossible task, but I'm going to try anyway, which is to try to kind of quickly summarize the challenges that we face here in Trenton and the greater Mercer area and the greater Delaware River Basin. And those challenges are manyfold, but in terms of kind of the focus for this evening's presentation, the challenges of natural gas drilling and what that means in the greater Delaware River watershed and what that means for our drinking quality here in Trenton. Obviously, as Carrie was discussing, the peril of Penn East, and I think Carrie is kind of in some ways even humble for her home boss. The Congresswoman has been an outright champion on this issue. We're also excited that the Congresswoman is not the only champion on this issue. This has kind of been a bipartisan effort, if you will. Senator Turner wanted to join us this evening. She could not. And then Senator Bateman from just north, from the 16th District, has also been incredibly outspoken about his concerns, environmental, as well as ecological, as well as just pure energy-based regarding Penn East. So I'm going to try to kind of do a quick summary on what actually is fracking, how it can kind of affect us here in Trenton and Mercer County, and a little bit on the Penn East pipeline and why we should care. Obviously, there are some of us here tonight that are kind of within the direct kind of zone of Penn East. And I think it's important for us to know here in Trenton, even though Penn East is not coming right through our backyards, it's pretty darn close. And it's critical for us to figure out exactly what that means. And then later on this evening, we'll hear more on kind of what green jobs really mean, and that's one of the things that Penn East talks about is the economic impact. I want to talk about the economic impact of clean drinking water and true green jobs. So I guess to start off, I want to talk about how, and actually Carrie had mentioned this too, how New Jersey is not, this is not as if the first pipeline to be proposed in New Jersey, and unfortunately there's a spate of pipelines that have been not only constructed here in New Jersey, but are being proposed for New Jersey as it stands. The old saw is that Ben Franklin said New Jersey was a keg tapped on both ends. I think we kind of need to amend that now, because we're being tapped by the natural gas industry as a conduit to take fracked natural gas and to transport it through New Jersey to the Northeast, as we can kind of see through this presentation here, and also as a way to get that gas to the south. And really this network is very expansive as it is right now, but quite honestly, there's a set of companies that want to make this even larger. And then in terms of kind of the Penn East pipeline itself, I'll return a little later in the presentation and kind of talk about its ecological impacts. But I think it's important to note it's just a huge pipeline. It's over 100 miles. It's crossing a tremendous number of counties in Pennsylvania, and then it's really coming right through the heart of the Sauerland region here in the state. It's coming, ripping through preserved open space and preserved farmlands, as well as a private property in Hunterdon and Mercer. But of course, our concern for this evening is not just those communities that are being affected, but it's kind of what happens after, if we're ever to see this pipeline get constructed. And obviously, that is a big if. And I think it's really important to know that because of the citizen advocacy we've seen, this is truly an unprecedented, grassroots movement that is coming out against this pipeline and is really getting the attention not just of only our elected officials, like we've heard from Carrie and from the Congresswoman, but also of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Delaware River Basin Commission. And that's actually a body that can make a big difference and have a big impact. And they are not that far away from us. They're just in West Trenton. But as I was saying, clearly you can see the pipeline is proposed to terminate in Hopewell. Our concern is that if it was ever constructed, you'd have to imagine that it would not stay in Hopewell for that long. Just some quick visuals on kind of what this means. What is a pipeline and what is fracking? How many people are familiar with fracking? If I could just have a show of hands. That's pretty great. I can definitely tell you it was only a couple years ago that most people didn't know what this was. And I think it's really important to kind of remind ourselves what exactly we're facing. So this is, in terms of, obviously, I'll get to fracking in a moment, but as you might imagine, once you drill for the gas, you have to transport it. And we're talking about really unprecedented construction for pipelines in the gas industry. These are not your grandfather's or father's pipeline. Their right-of-ways are massive. And we don't actually have to kind of look out west or look to Pennsylvania to see their impact. They are, this is a picture from Pennsylvania. I'll have a picture a little later in the presentation looking at the exact impact here in New Jersey. But 100-foot right-of-way, sadly, is not, has become the industry standard. Now, in terms of kind of why we should care about what this is, we ultimately care about this for a whole host of reasons. But if we're just looking parochially, we care about fracking and gas drilling because of its impacts upon the Delaware River. The Delaware River provides drinking water for 3 million people across, not only here in New Jersey, but 15 million people in the region. And it's critical to know that the gas industry is very excited to move forward on drilling. They have not been able to do that because there's a moratorium in place at the Delaware River Basin Commission. And I'm excited to do a brief kind of overview of analysis by CNA, which is a kind of a big independent consultant firm out of Washington that the Delaware River Keeper Network worked with and partnered on a study to show exactly what fracking would mean if it happened in the Delaware River watershed. This map right here, this is the watershed. This is Marcellus Shale. You can't quite see it, but the Marcellus Shale comes really darn close to New Jersey. But it doesn't quite matter that it's not here in New Jersey because that watershed obviously is. And obviously everything in that watershed is going to flow down the Delaware and ultimately, if we're not careful, into our water supply. And this is actually a slightly kind of clearer map. You can kind of see anywhere that's shaded in. So the light green is Marcellus, the gray is Marcellus. It's all shale that's thousands of feet under the ground. The gas industry is very excited at getting and obtaining. And Pennsylvania really has been our canary in the coal mine, sadly. They've had more than 5,000 individuals have formed an organization called Friends of the Harmed. Those are families that have been directly impacted by gas drilling. And that's really it's no mistake because a lot of these communities that are being impacted, the welling pads are literally right, within sometimes 100 feet of homes. That's something that we don't have here in New Jersey, but we certainly don't want that to have happen. That's important to kind of know that the wolf is at our door. And the CNA study is really helpful because it actually talks about where gas drilling could occur. You'll notice that those red areas and those blue areas, that's not right in New Jersey, but that's right next door. And the red areas are as you can kind of see there's more than 500 well pads per county that would be developed if fracking was allowed in the Delaware River Basin. That's a tremendous impact. And something that, unfortunately, Governor Christie, before the Delaware Basin Commission came out with its moratorium, had actually said, yeah, we like the idea of test pilot wells. We obviously want to make sure that we're not testing and rolling the dice with our drinking water, not only up in the upper Delaware, but in the lower Delaware, because obviously the watershed is connected. This next slide is just kind of, again, showing a very kind of similar analysis of exactly where we could see more welling pads, and then both drilling and well pads, and then to kind of put a clearer picture on what this actually looks like. It's immense. These are industrial facilities. A well pad will take up at least 15 acres. Traditionally, these are areas that are forested, and just to kind of draw your attention, and we'll hear, and Jerry will talk about this in a moment. But that big pool there that kind of looks like a football field, that's an open standing pit of wastewater. It's literally a toxic brew of chemicals. We clearly don't want that anywhere near our drinking water. And sadly, this is one of the preferred methods for the industry for dealing with our wastewater. And it's an issue that we're struggling with here in New Jersey to ban fracking waste. It's not banned right now, and it still is coming into our communities. Just to run through quickly, what does a well pad look like from the ground level? That's what it looks like. And trust me, that is not, it's a pretty postcard other than the fact you have a massive industrial facility right there. Let's keep going. This kind of shows, that red arrow shows you where there's an open pit. All the blue arrows show the right of way for the pipeline, and then you have the 15 acres of the industrial facility right there as well. Some of the impacts that you'll see from fracking, again, Jerry's going to kind of touch on this. I think the best way to kind of think of what fracking involves is that you have to literally blow up shale. You're not going to have to use just baking soda to do that. And the industry, we'll hear again from Jerry in a moment, but they use diesel, they use formaldehyde, they use known carcinogens to be able to do their dirty deeds. And unfortunately, we see that that does not stay down there. It comes back up in a kind of a euphemism the industry uses called flowback, which is something you don't want to have anywhere near. 13% of that flowback comes back to the surface. You'll see in the backgrounds there, that's, again, those open air frac waste pits. We obviously don't want that anywhere near the Delaware River Basin. I'm going to go kind of real quick here. This, again, these are the proposed pipelines. So earlier we looked at existing pipelines. Here are the proposed pipelines. So PennEast it should not be looked at as in a vacuum. This is part of a larger strategy by the gas industry to try to use New Jersey as a conduit. And I just want to return to the picture here of PennEast. It stretches across Pennsylvania, and a big reason why it starts where it does, just north of Wilkes-Barre, is because that's where obviously the Marcellus Shale is, and that's where the drilling is. And PennEast is being advocated. It's not kind of it's not just one company. PennEast, in many ways, is kind of a made-up name. It's actually a collection of 6 utility companies. The ones that we know best are PSE&G and South Jersey Industries. Now, in terms of its ecological impact, I don't have time to get into all the details, but just know that it's crossing 88 waterways across the region, including the Delaware, including a massive number of Category 1 streams that are in Hunterdon and Mercer counties. Obviously, those impacts affect the Delaware River and affect the drinking water here in Trenton and Mercer County. I mentioned this before, the Kinder Morgan Northeast Upgrade Project. This picture was taken 2 years ago in High Point State Park. That's obviously the destruction that we could see happening very close to home in communities just north of here in Baldpate Mountain and Hopewell. That's the sort of destruction we obviously don't want to see. We don't have to look at pictures out west. We have pictures right here in New Jersey. And I just want to kind of wrap up by talking about what we can do. And this, I think, is kind of an important part of this evening, is that this is not just kind of doom and gloom. This is about what we can do to get involved here in Trenton and across Mercer County to make an impact. And the first thing, of course, is that there's been a tremendous effort in the affected municipalities all across Pennsylvania and certainly here in New Jersey to pass resolutions opposing PennEast. That's a great start. I would say the next step, of course, is that Delaware River Basin Commission. And the Delaware River Basin Commission, it's based in West Trenton. They're actually holding a hearing on November 10th, just announced today. So the timing was quite perfect. That hearing on Tuesday, November 10th, allows all of us, the public, to tell them that they need to do their jobs to protect the watershed. At the very least, to have 7 public hearings on PennEast and allow all of us the opportunity to weigh in on these issues in a substantial way. There were 500 people at the scoping hearing in West Trenton in February. There were 2 nights later, there were close to 400 in Hampton and Hunterdon County. I can guarantee you that if there are hearings all across the Penn East pipeline, we're going to see a tremendous opportunity for the public to come out. And the Delaware River Basin Commission is actually, has some degree of, I want to say independence, but they have a mission focused on the Delaware River Basin. And that's something that FERC certainly does not have. And I just want to, wrap up my presentation by mentioning the fact that Penn East did officially file an application with FERC late last week. We knew all along that Penn East was, this was not beanbag, as they say. That Penn East was serious, and they wanted to move forward. And now they've officially applied. The game is afoot, but I would ask each of you to consider to officially intervene. We're working with a collection of organizations. I'm thankful that Patty Kronheim, who's a pipeline fighter extraordinaire, is here with us this evening. Patty and others from all of our organizations are working to get intervene, to encourage more citizens and organizations to officially intervene. You'll find information at the sign-in sheet. It's a very simple process, but a very important one, to have more citizens go on the record to say, look, if FERC needs to acknowledge our concerns here in Mercer County and in Trent. So I just want to wrap up because I'm very excited to hear from Jerry, who really is not only an expert on these issues but also an engineer and someone who kind of knows the good, the bad, and the ugly on these issues. So without further ado, I want to pass it over to my esteemed panelist.